Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope in the last week, the presentation from last week made you look at things, science, and health issues a little differently. Anyone have a comment they'd like to share with us? Anything that came up that drew their attention and held their attention? You could put it into chat, or you could tell Jessie, and she'll read your comment if you don't want to share it out loud. Is nothing, no one had any questions, nothing that came up that held them fast regarding science this week?
Other than it made me oh, I'm trying to take off my video. Hi, Stephanie, how are you? It
Hi.
just made me a little bit more conscientious on eating better, watching my own health, you know.
Oh, okay.
In terms of that, and just
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. Anyone else? Well, I'll tell you, I'll share with you. Go ahead, someone else.
No, I just want to say, this is Doris. In terms of nutrition and eating, I have been on a journey to really change my habits or what I do, and on a daily basis, more consistently, to turn it around and to make it better so that I can get the benefits of the time frame by helping my food to digest, and also being more conscientious about what I'm eating, even how I'm eating it. And
okay.
Yeah, because it's a lot on that. I've been involved with health and wellness for a little while in terms of certain areas. I'm not a nurse, I'm not a medical person, but I am in the community. So yeah, it was very interesting. That was my second week. This is my third. I missed the first week, and I'm really now more excited about going back and getting the first week and just catching up, doing the reading, and really getting the information so that I can be able to disseminate it, when it's time. If I'm able to, additionally, if there are any certificates or whatever, I want to be able to earn it. I want to be able to get it, even though I'm not a medical person. But I do have some training.
Good, good, good. Well, I'm glad you found the program last week powerful,
very
insightful,
powerful,
moving. And I think one of the things when we think about nutrition and health, the food that we eat really has a great impact and long-term effect on our health. And when they're designing clinical trials and they're making new medications, new treatments, new interventions, they have to also think about the food that goes along with it, what people can eat, what they can't eat, how much, how little. So it's very powerful and very insightful and very important. And I'm glad that you got something out of last week's session. And I expect you're going to get even more and more as we go along. The first session, what Jessie can do, she can send you the YouTube link, and you could go in and watch, and then you could do the questions that come after, okay, that everyone got.
That's
so
great.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, today we have another exciting day. However, one of our speakers, Miss Jacqueline Vera, who used to be at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and she worked as a patient reporter. She reported outcomes in community engagement. So she reported patients' outcomes on various clinical trials that were done while at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. But she has moved on to NYU. She's also a member of the Native Afro-Latina New Yorker who grew up in Hell's Kitchen. She obtained her undergraduate degree at Hunter College with a major in sociology. She attended the Cooney Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy with a concentration in community health education and specialization in maternal child health, reproductive, and sexual health. She's fluent in Spanish and engages the Latinx community via relevant public health projects where she has conducted qualitative analysis. Ms. Vera is committed to working on projects that seek to engage diverse populations for improvement of healthcare programs and services. She is dedicated to serving her community and is passionate about her work. She enjoys traveling, hiking, and looks forward to running the New York City Marathon.
Ambitious.
Yes, yes. Energetic, ambitious. However, she was so overbooked, and I do appreciate her so very much. So today we're gonna watch her video. If you have questions, if they are super complicated, we'll pass them on to her. Otherwise, the next voice that you're gonna hear will be Miss Jacqueline Vera's voice and her video of her last presentation. So here we are. Thank you all. Jesse?
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up. Hold on.
Okay.
A great job for my introduction, but I quickly just want to recap and really focus on what ProCell does. So I work at a core at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, where we provide support to investigators across the institution who are seeking to use various research methods. And so identification of skills or data collection and analysis, that's the primary focus of our work. But we really are working hard to engage diverse populations, right? Because right now we have a lot of research and understand the population, mostly white population, and we don't have enough research to understand diverse communities. So Black, Latino, Asian, you know, that's where we really want to focus and engage more minorities in our clinical trials or our studies with a focus around cancer. So that is the core that I work with. We fall under the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. And like Lula may mentioned earlier, I just manage the day-to-day operation for that core facility. So it's really something that we're excited about and really kind of connecting and engaging with the really diverse communities here in New York specifically. So I'll give you an example actually of how we do or are trying to engage these communities. Let's say we recruit participants from a specific, you know, demographic. Let's say it's Latino, and we have an existing questionnaire that's in English, but they don't speak English. So what we do is we translate that document to Spanish and make sure that it's understandable for them in order for us to collect that information from them, right? We want to make sure that we're using the correct language for this target population. And quickly, I obtained my my master's in public health at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, and I was born and raised here in New York. But I really would like to quickly go around and see if we could introduce each other, or if you introduce yourselves. And what I'd like to ask you in your introduction is, have you ever participated in a focus group, or have you ever been interviewed on your thoughts or feelings about a treatment, or let's say a program or a service, particularly in a healthcare setting? So maybe, I don't know, we can start with, I think I see, let's go with Sandra. Vera.
Here, I sell you $8.
Yeah, that one's definitely broken.
In case you're speaking, Sandra, you're.
The ones that are good, yeah.
How about Michael?
Open-ended data, right? Like a conversation could be open-ended, a story, a narrative, and it's understanding the participant's experience beyond, let's say, a survey, right? Like in a survey, we're capturing very specific, kind of numbered items from a scale of 1 to 10. I'm sure a lot of you have seen those, and you answer 1. That's the difference with qualitative data. It's going beyond that. Okay, well, how did you feel about this? What was your experience? That's qualitative research. And here, this is a really cute illustration that I really enjoy showing, but why is qualitative research important? So these are the 2 different examples, which is, what I just kind of broke down between the differences between quantitative methods and qualitative methods. So the researcher using quantitative methods here is interested in how many people took the free ice cream. And then in the second one, you could see that the researcher is using qualitative methods to want to know what people felt and why. This methods provides like the context, right, to observe phenomena and grounded in the participants' own words and experiences. So here you could see, what did you feel when you saw the free ice cream? I was excited, a little scared. And why was that? So like the question following questions is known as probing. In qualitative methods, we're probing for more information to get you to share that experience that you had, the thoughts that you had, and the feelings around that. So why is qualitative research useful in the medical field? Historically, the medical field is known for developing new drugs and interventions, and then they capture that data to understand the side effects and the outcomes, right, of the specific drug. And then they analyze the results. Like that's a whole process. But most of this research in the past didn't include the voice of the participant. Without understanding like the social context, very little is known about, how the patient feels during the process. Like, this chemo, how did you feel besides literally throwing up? I felt sad, I felt depressed, or maybe another type of drug. Well, it actually gave me energy and I felt happy. So that's, the difference is there. So why should we care about that, right? Can anyone take a guess? Give it a stab.
I'll take a stab at that.
I'll share an example.
Yeah, I wanted to repeat it.
Did I just hear someone get unmuted?
Yes. Hi, my name is Cecil Moniquette. I work at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx.
What do we care about what people feel
Yeah.
during research?
Uh-huh.
Obviously, because if you know how they feel, then you may want to do something about it to make them feel better than that. To keep them, coming, so you can have more people participate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So without understanding the patient's attitudes and beliefs, sometimes researchers, they can risk developing an intervention that's not working or that's not useful to the patient. And it could sometimes even be harmful to the patient, right? So it's really understanding beyond the survey and beyond what we physically see. We want to make sure that, we're doing right by the patient and doing no harm. So that's really why qualitative research is very important in the medical field. And today, medicine over the years has become more interested in patients' voice and their experience. And, you know, we have a lot of health professionals that want to have that patient perspective, which is great.
May I ask a question?
I have some
Um,
comments in the chat. For Sonia,
hello?
said that in layman language, I'd say quantity and
Oh,
quality.
hello,
And then,
Jesse.
to the
Okay, let her ask the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to, interrupt. It seems,
No, that's okay.
I ask a question, if it's not good, I'll just wait till the end.
No, go ask your
Sure.
question.
Okay, my question was just very short. Just piggybacking on what was said in terms of why would it be important or why we should be concerned. I was just going to say, because it could also have a lot to do with the culture of the person who's being, at the time being helped, because depending on how they are approached, may cause them to either open up or to maybe hold in information or to share what they would really like to share. So I think it's a total consideration, very sensitive and being perceptive of that person, that patient, so that they feel more comfortable if they're of a different culture, speak a different language, or may not be necessarily a different culture, but have been raised a certain way or with a certain concept in a way, to be approached. And if it's not done that way, then they may again hold back or keep in information and not want to share or be frightened, to move on.
Very well said. Very well said. I hope I'm not echoing. Very well said. And if we just look back a year, 2 years ago, during the COVID crisis, what was the biggest problem during that crisis? Even when they found the vaccine, let's start when they wanted people to participate in clinical trials, that was a problem. When they wanted to use the vaccine to vaccinate people and give them the COVID vaccine, that was another issue. So what you're saying is extremely important. It is very, very important that it's very, very important that people are able to ask the right questions in the right context to the right people at the right time, convey information, ask
You froze up.
Lula, we can't hear you. Maybe you could turn off
in a way
video.
that otherwise what we have is all right, turn off the video. Oh, you guys didn't hear me?
No, not really.
Oh, all right, do you hear me? Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes, I can. I hope everybody else can.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, all right. No, what I said was the comments that she made were right on point, all very accurate, and that we have to appreciate the fact that now communities are being reviewed. I don't want to say studied. I want to say communities are being allowed or encouraged to express how they want researchers to approach them, how they want researchers to speak to them, how researchers to include them in research. Because all we have to do first, it was getting people involved in clinical trials to see who was susceptible, to come up with the signs, symptoms, and indications of COVID. Then when we made a COVID vaccine, it was getting people to take the COVID vaccine. All of this required that academicians, scientists, your medical people had to appreciate, study, and get community people involved in the whole research process, because you can make the best vaccine in the world, and if everyone refuses, it's not doing any good.
Exactly. So true.
So very well said. Very well said. Okay, so we are going to continue with this. How many more minutes do we have up here, Jesse?
I will say around 10 minutes or so.
Oh, okay. So ask Miss Crowder if she could just hang on for 10 minutes and we will be finished and move on to the next part. Okay? All right, so you can start the slides again.
These, what you just were speaking about, Michael said to attempt to release anxiety, minimize stress and
Okay.
depression, and Sandra also said alleviate frustration of a known, get some control. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, those are all really good points. Actually, sorry, I didn't notice these comments in the chat, but thanks for that, Agnes.
No worries.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for sharing those really important facts. That's a very good point. And yes, we want to make sure it's not adding more than we want and harming the patient through anxiety. Or stress, which then could also potentially lead to other health issues. So moving along, there are different types of clinical trials, right? And today I'm really gonna focus on 3, which is the 3 that you see here highlighted in red, but I'll give you examples of the others and really just a really quick kind of summary. So clinical trials are types of research studies, and qualitative research can support all of these, right? So here's a little background. The first one is treatment research. So that really means it generally involves an intervention such as a medication, psychotherapy, or new devices, or new approaches to surgery or radiation therapy. The second one is screening research, which really aims to find the best way to detect certain disorders or health conditions. The third one is implementation research, and that really involves program planning using best practices, right, informed by research findings, and other evidence-based practice for program evaluation and or solution. And prevention research looks at better ways to prevent disorders from developing or returning. And different kinds of prevention research may study medicines, vitamins, vaccines, or lifestyle changes. Those are types of prevention research. And quality of life research explores ways to improve comfort and the quality of life for an individual with a chronic illness. And then lastly, we have genetics, which aims to improve the prediction of disorders by identifying and understanding like a person's genes and how the illnesses may be related to them. Okay, so context, right? So how does qualitative research support clinical trials? Well, it adds context, right? It provides and adds meaning and insight for a particular circumstance, event, thought, idea, statement, etc. It really helps generate like in-depth insight into how a patient feels and what they think, right? Which is what I've been talking about. So, using qualitative research will uncover things that like a researcher wouldn't be able to do in a lab or in an office, in a doctor's office. They wouldn't be able to easily get to that information. So it really helps us to understand behaviors in a person's natural setting. So in other words, in our day-to-day life, this is something, like I said, you can't do at a lab or in a doctor's office. So they want to understand, uncovering, and understanding our day-to-day in our homes, in our commute during, to and from work, in our neighborhoods, understanding more about our culture and the language, all of those things. So, is the treatment, intervention, medication, whatever it is it being used how it was intended to, right? So context brings a lot of information to really understand if, the program or the service or the intervention, right, is doing what it's supposed to do. So, examples of qualitative research. Here I'll start with our first example, which is treatment research. Qualitative research can help develop questionnaires through cognitive interviews. So this is an example where it's a survey, a scale, a depression scale, and we want to measure, you know, how often during the past weeks were you bothered by little interest or pleasure in doing things? 0 to, you know, 1, several days, more than the days, nearly every day. So you can see, you can kind of just identify how you're feeling based on these questions that they're asking. So in this example, right, the researcher wants to understand or make sure that you understand, that you understand this scale, this questionnaire in front of you. And again, you know, it's getting at the comprehension and the retrieval of these questions so that we could understand and really get to the aim of understanding depression, right? So really cognitive interviews is the researcher will have the participant kind of go through and answer all of the questions in the questionnaire. And then they'll ask you, why did you, you know, what did you understand from answering the questions? What does it mean to you? Does this term mean anything to you, right? And really, let's say the investigator, I'm gonna just use an example, wanted to recruit participants from, I'm gonna say Jackson Heights in Queens, and you know, there are a lot of Spanish-speaking people in Jackson Heights, and they wanna understand depression among this population, right? Like Latinos. And personally, like in my own family, like the word depression isn't really used. They use a word called aburrida, which means bored or triste, right? Or which means sad. They don't really use the accurate word deprimida. So let's say if they had the translation of depression, deprimida, in the questionnaire, that's not a really common word that, you know, my family would use. So we want to make sure that we think about the target language and non-English speaking participants that would use the word depression, and make sure that, you know, is this a common word for them? Does it exist? In some cultures, there's certain words that don't exist in the direct translation from the English. So the researcher here in this example, they'll continue with more and more questions until they get, you know, the feedback. Hey, this population, we see that there's a theme here. This is the more common word for them. So if we're gonna recruit from this community, let's use this word, because as we see in our research through the cognitive interviews, they were able to identify the language that is most, you know, common for them, that's appropriate in their culture, their choice of word and language. And that's really how we develop questionnaires in non-English, you know, communities. And I think that, I think I have a comment here. Begets denial, anger, embarrassment, insult. Correct, right. So, you know, that could also have another term and meaning for certain cultures as well. So what other word could we use that better help them understand what we mean without it feeling like it's such a heavy word, or a word that's accepted in their culture? I did quantitative depression research. Nurse really surprised the results. Yeah, thanks, Sandra, for sharing that. It's interesting. Definitely. So right, so, you know, here the researcher can ask, how comfortable do you feel with answering this question over a phone? how easy or difficult was it to select an answer from the options provided? Why did you select that option in comparison to others? Why? We want to make sure that we develop a questionnaire that's most appropriate for this certain demographic. So that's an example of treatment research. So in the next slide, this is screening research. Let me get to the chat really quick. My biggest finding was associated with weakness with depression. Yep, definitely. Those definitely do go hand in hand. So thanks for sharing that again, Tamara. Screening research. That's our second example, which aims to really find the best ways to detect certain disorders or health conditions. So here, let's say the qualitative researcher, they can help in the recruitment and in the enrollment of participants, right, for study participants. And in here, I have these two posters, and let's say it's the recruitment, the study is for smoking cessation program or lung cancer screening program. The team and the researcher, they will conduct a focus group to ensure the accurate representation of the sample, depending on the demographics, and efficient recruitment methods determine the best possible outcome, right, for this target population. So let's say the target population was Black and Latino communities, and we want to focus on recruiting in neighborhoods like, let's say, the Bronx, Central Harlem, Spanish Harlem. You know, we're going to present these ads, these two that I have here. In the focus group, we would pretty much ask them, like, what do you think? And was there any information that you didn't understand? Did this resonate with you? Or do you see themselves in this campaign ad, right? Was it too much information, too little? Was there too much medical jargon? How would you feel about this kind of ad in a bodega in the community, or in a health clinic, in a community health clinic, or at a church? Would you prefer brochures? Would that be something that, you know, you would be more interested in and engage you? Was the commercial or this ad, let's say we had it in Spanish, was it translated well? Did it speak to you? Did it speak to you and your culture? The images, like all of these things would be part of the focus group, because we want to make sure that before we set out to really recruit in this community, we're using materials that are appropriate and culturally sensitive and all those things, right? And that also that would capture their attention. And that's ultimately what we want, is have the community be interested and engaged in the research studies. So here is another example, implementation research, which is program planning, and qualitative research can help in design of this through observations and in-depth interviews, right? So here, the researcher wants to know how they can best design a program. What are the barriers? And program evaluation includes, what did the participants like or didn't like about the intervention? Why did they react in the way that they did? It may also include observations of the community, right? Identifying the locations, to overcome potential barriers to implementation and promote uptake of an intervention, right? So qualitative research really generates in-depth insight into trial recruitment barriers. This is an example. It helps to understand the acceptability and feasibility of interventions being tested, and it also helps improve the trial conduct. it can help in changes into procedures, such as methods of participant recruitment. And it looks at the background, the setting to ensure the relevance to the program, to identify like social, cultural, health, economic, or political factors that might affect uptake or interest, right? So here in this example, I have pictures from my own project that I did for my capstone in grad school. And this is looking at the social environmental factors and how they predict HPV vaccine uptake in an ongoing like multi-site study. This was a study that was done in Texas, in Chicago, and here in New York City. So I used qualitative research to identify barriers to study participation among Mexican immigrants, which was the focus of this study. And it took place at the Mexican consulate in El Paso, Texas, which is where I went for this. So I observed, I conducted in-depth interviews in Spanish, and I made field observations to understand really the social, as I said, environmental factors and their impact on the recruitment of participants for this specific study, which was HPV vaccines. So here, when I visited during the summer of 2019, which was at a time where, it was the peak of the Trump administration, where it was a lot of intensified anti-immigration rhetoric. And so the research really, while conducting the in-depth interviews in the consulate, I identified, the research helped me identify and document multiple barriers to accessing healthcare, particularly interest in this HPV study. It really, when I spoke and asked the potential participants and even staff that worked there, part of the interviews was, what do you think would be a barrier for, how does the barrier present here for you? And, they told me the fear of deportation. I feel like, stepping into these locations, it reminds me that I can be deported. Here's an example of the brochures on the table where it says in Spanish, si se detienen, if you get detained, and it was everywhere. So you can imagine going to a consulate and you have all these very kind of messages around, what to do if you get detained, ICE, and all of this. What are you gonna feel about being interested in, participating in this study that's set up nearby? I think, well, from my research, they had much more other concerns that really affected and impacted their choice to want to participate in a study. Part of that includes giving their information. They think that if I disclose my name and my phone number, they're gonna find me and I'm gonna get deported. So it really prevented family from seeking medical help. And that was the fear that they were expressing. So, I used direct observation of the environment. This is an example. You can see even the border in El Paso, Texas, and you could see the messages, the brochures there. I did the in-depth interviews at the consulate, and this is what kind of helped me inform my research. Where then I collected that and I did the analysis and presented the project. So moving along, qualitative data collection, right? So the most common methods used in clinical trials are the ones we just covered, which are in-depth interviews, focus groups, cognitive interviews, and observations. So part of the data collection is the qualitative data analysis. And, you know, we collect the data through what I just said, through the interviews, focus groups, and all of that. So what happens with all of this data that we collect? The researcher and coding team applies codes to the data set, which involves the reading of the transcripts, identifying, selecting, and applying the codes. So the interviews are transcripts, right? The observations become notes that then you would, you know, kind of identify and select and apply codes that you identify that have a theme. So
Okay, we're done with the video.
What happened? Something happened to the video?
No, we're done with the video. This is the last.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, this is the last. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Jesse,
Mhm.
for being so on time and attentive. Does anyone have any questions? I think what I'd like for all of you just to think about is just think about our experience with COVID and how there's so many things that played out during the COVID epidemic and in terms of clinical trials and in terms of research. And you could think about the qualitative use of information that supported COVID research, and so much of the qualitative information that was obtained was not favorable in terms of science, in terms of COVID. So I really, really think that this tape is very valuable. It has a lot of information. I'm going to encourage you to go back and take a look at it. We'll talk about it a little more at the next session because I don't want it to delay our next speaker, who has been waiting in the wings to share information with you. So I'd like to introduce to all of you Ms. Tamara Crowder. She has a Master's of Science and a Bachelor's of Science. She's worked at the Weill Cornell Clinical Translational Science Center, CORE. She is the lab supervisor, and she's held that position since 2018. At Cornell, she's extremely valuable. She assists clinicians and junior investigators in implementing their research projects, while she and her staff continues to maintain the multifaceted CTSC lab as a New York State CLI certified laboratory. And she'll explain to you more about what that is. Prior to that, she served for 7 years as a lab supervisor at Columbia University, clinical flow cytometry laboratory, which providing immunophenotyping diagnostics to NYP Columbia. She was the recipient of the Dr. Nathan Lane Award for Clinical and Educational Excellence in 2011, a New York State certified clinical lab technician since 2009. Ms. Tamara has over 20 years of laboratory experience in research and clinical laboratories. At Einstein College of Medicine, she completed a Master's of Science in Biochemistry with a research focus on enzyme mechanics. She also holds a BS in Biology from Harvard College. So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Ms. Tamara Crowder, and we're looking forward to hearing all that she has to say. Not all, because I know she's full. So we're sort of limited, and I know that she has a rich presentation for us. The next voice that you will hear will be Ms. Crowder. Welcome, Ms. Crowder, and thank you.
Tamara, are you there?
Okay, sorry about that, you guys. I was trying to find the window that has me in it. Okay.
That's okay. Thank you,
So,
thank you, thank you.
you don't, do you guys, you don't see the slides, do you? Or no?
No
Right.
slides
No.
yet.
Okay, 1 second, and I will get. Okay, do you see slides now?
Yes, I do see it.
Yes,
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you for that great introduction, Lula. I am going to talk a little bit about quantitative research methods, which are sort of the, not exactly the opposite, but the partner to qualitative research methods, which you just heard about. So the first way to think about the two different research techniques are, what are the similarities and differences? You can achieve different kinds of research goals by using qualitative and quantitative research techniques. Qualitative data is expressed in words. It's used to understand concepts, thoughts, or experiences. This type of research enables you to gather in-depth insights onto topics that are not well understood. Common qualitative methods include interviews with open-ended questions, observations described in words, and literature reviews that explore concepts and theories. So a qualitative question might be, how are you feeling? Where there could be countless ways that the question could be answered, whereas a quantitative question might be, what is the patient's blood pressure, or how tall is the patient? So quantitative data is expressed in numbers and graphs. It's used to test or confirm theories and assumptions. This type of research can be used to establish generalizable facts about a topic. Common quantitative methods include experiments, observations recorded as numbers, and surveys with closed-ended questions, such as maybe 3 options, a multiple choice with 3 options that are not open-ended, leaving the participant to answer in a more creative manner. So in this brief lecture, I like to use COVID-19 because it's a very easy example, which almost everybody knows a little bit about COVID-19, and because of the recent pandemic. So in quantitative research, scientific questions are addressed with numerical analysis using computation techniques. The researcher is interested in the relationship of numerical data and related events. So in this example, I will show you New York City COVID-19 data from 2020. And we are looking to answer the question of, does positivity correlate with age, and does the positivity rate correlate with the different age groups? And our working hypothesis is that older adults have an increased COVID-19 positivity rate because they're more susceptible to the illness. So what are the characteristics of quantitative research? It's objective. There are clearly defined questions. We use standardized tools. It has hard data, and the experiments are repeatable. So what does it mean to be objective? Objective means it's not influenced by personal feelings or opinions. So in this scenario, positivity is determined by an established laboratory test. We don't just ask the patient whether they feel sick or not. Results are either positive or negative as determined by the presence of COVID-19 viral particles in the respiratory system. The subject's feelings or opinions on viral exposure do not affect the test results. So even if somebody feels like they've been exposed, if the laboratory test says they're negative, we're going to define them as negative. So there are clearly defined questions in quantitative research. So the questions are not ambiguous or open to more than one interpretation. For example, what is the subject's age? Is there COVID-19 present in the respiratory system? And what does the laboratory test results show? So quantitative research also uses standardized tools. So the testing was not developed in one overnight. It took a lot of time to develop the test, and it's been tried on many different kinds of samples. And how do we determine that it's standardized and approved for usage? So standardized tools have undergone rigorous testing and have been approved for use by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. So lab tests are standardized by the manufacturer through a validation process. The validation process proves the accuracy of the lab test. In this scenario, the COVID-19 rapid PCR test is used to determine COVID positivity. So what does validation mean? How does the manufacturer prove that their test is worth using? So to determine accuracy, the validation process defines the specificity and sensitivity of the test. So what is specificity defined as? Specificity is the extent to which a diagnostic test is specific to a particular condition. For example, in this scenario, the COVID test must show positivity only for COVID-19 and not other similar respiratory infections like swine flu. So what does sensitivity mean? It means the test ability to correctly detect ill patients who do have the condition. In this example, the manufacturer must establish a minimum amount of COVID-19 particles able to be detected by the test. So as you guys know, probably from hearing about the history of COVID, sometimes you may test negative and then a week later you test positive because there are only a few COVID particles in your system and they weren't able to be detected by the test. So the manufacturer needs to define what this minimum level of detection is. So another quantitative research characteristic is that the data is defined as hard data as opposed to soft data. So hard data is quantitative data in the forms of numbers or graphs. In contrast, qualitative data, soft data, can be defined by opinions, thoughts, and ideas. And in this example, the COVID-19 PCR test results are either positive or negative. So the last characteristic of quantitative research we're going to talk about is repeatable. So the test must be repeatable. So a result obtained by an experiment or observational study should be achieved again with a high degree of agreement when the study is replicated with the same methodology by different researchers. If the experiment were repeated under the same conditions, the same conclusion would be achieved. So if we have two technicians in the lab or two testers administering the COVID-19 test, they both should see the same positive or negative result. If they don't, either there's something wrong with the person doing the test or the test itself has a problem. So to ensure reproducibility, there are quality standards with known values tested alongside those subject samples. So testing labs across the country also run the same standards, often which are commercially available. So generally, when we're doing a lab test, the manufacturer provides a standard, which is guaranteed to be positive and guaranteed to be negative. So when you start doing your lab test in the day, before you run patient samples, you need to run those standards and make sure they get an acceptable result. If they don't, you need to go back and look at your systems and make sure they're working properly, because you can't run patient samples if you're not getting the results you expect from the standards. So like I was saying, if the values that you receive for the standards fall within the acceptable range, which again is defined by the testing manufacturer, the test is considered to be working properly. So how is reproducibility measured? So in sciences and other things, you may get 12.1 for one result and 12.2 for another result. Generally, those are considered virtually, your test would be considered to be okay, unless it's super, super precise. But there's going to be some amount of variation in results, but in general, on average, you should get the same results when you run the same sample multiple times. So precision refers to how close the measurements are to each other. So in this example here, we're trying, and accuracy refers to how close the measurements are to the real value. And ideal data is both accurate and precise. However, there are different scenarios that sometimes occur in real life. So ideally, you would like to see everything at the target, highly accurate and highly precise. However, sometimes you may receive high accuracy, things are close to the target, but they're scattered, there's low precision. Or you may see low accuracy, you're not reaching your target, but you're close to another region around the goal. So this is low accuracy and high precision. And then low accuracy and low precision would be nothing, not very much is reaching the target at all. So it's kind of scattered. Okay, those were the goals of quantitative research again. And then I just wanted to show the data for this example. So in this case, our hypothesis is correct in that for these dates that I picked in 2020 and 2021, the older population over 75 years has a higher rate of positivity than the younger population, 18 to 24. So this is the kind of data that we would look at in a research paper that had qualitative research. Okay, that's all. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much. If you have a question, put it in the chat. Because I know COVID had brought up so many questions in the community. So many people had really, really hard, tough questions. So now's the time.
I think one of the things that during the COVID, especially with the vaccine, a lot of people felt that it was too quick for them to even come up with a vaccine because they felt that most vaccines took years to make. And so for them to be rushed to present the community with a vaccine so that people can get back into the workforce, a lot of people were skeptical, especially in the African-American community, skeptical that it was even effective. So a lot of people had different notions about it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's completely understandable. I mean, you're right. In normally a drug, if it's being brought to market, or a vaccine, if it's being brought to market, sometimes the research can take 10 to 15, even 20 years of research before it's actually presented to patients. So that concern is definitely very valid. And the reality is nobody knows what these vaccines are going to, the long-term effects are, because we didn't have a chance to study that. However, I think it's pretty clear, at least to me, from looking at the data, that the vaccines were effective in the general population at saving lives. But I mean, individual situations may vary and nobody knows what the long-term effects is. But we don't also know, a lot of people suffer from long COVID. So COVID also has long-term effects that we really haven't been able to define yet. I think this was a very unique situation, and scientists, doctors, pharmaceutical companies kind of just did the best they could in the particular scenario that was being presented to them. But you're right, nobody knows what the long-term effects of these vaccines are going to be.
Well, if no one else has any questions, I thank you so very much, Tamara, for a very informative an eye-opening presentation. And it was great having you. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we have more questions. Go ahead.
The link
ahead.
for the YouTube to pick up the classes.
Oh, Jesse's gonna send it to you. She's
Okay,
gonna send them out to everyone,
Okay,
along with the questions.
okay.
Because did you, the question that I have is, all of you should have gotten the questions, so you'll start, just answering 5 questions about the presentations, because I just want to stimulate you to think a little more about the research. That's my goal, for you to just think a little more. So the questions should have went out as well. Jesse was sending them out last week, so if you didn't get them, let us know.
Got the syllabus.
Oh, okay. And the syllabus, you got the syllabus, okay?
I got the
But
syllabus.
thank you. Oh, I just want to thank Tamara again. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Tamara. I appreciate this presentation so very much.
Thank you.
Because go right ahead, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I heard a question or someone was speaking. Okay, thank you. Jesse.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Would you read the comments? I think they're coming in. I think they were great comments. Dr. Bruce Rivera's comment.
Yes, thank you through and compressed presentation. Kudos to you for a job well done.